Hello, beautiful women, and welcome to Sistership Circle Inspiration. I'm Tanya Lynn, and I am so excited because today we get to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that is healing the sisterhood wound. And I have brought along one of my absolute favorite priestesses to join me in this conversation, who has such a depth of knowledge and just has so much to offer this conversation. Oh my God, I am so excited that she is here with us. So before I introduce her, I want to read you a little intro from my book, Open Your Heart, How to Be a New Generation Feminine Leader. And this is part of Healing the Sisterhood chapter. It actually starts it. Trust the feminine, trust the sisterhood, trust the tribe. Why is this so hard? Because it wasn't safe. Cattiness, competition, judgment, being made fun of, teased, and put down. Fearing that emotional vulnerability will result in feeling weak and getting hurt. Trying to fit in, trying to belong, wanting so desperately to be loved, seen, and heard. How about getting excited for a new friendship, wearing your heart on your sleeve, and then having it ripped to shreds? So you close up, shut down, and hide, vowing never to open up your heart again. We were trained in school as small children to keep quiet to fit in. Don't raise your hand in fear of saying the wrong thing and being criticized. Don't speak up in fear of being ostracized. Don't be weird in fear of being bullied. It was all about kids interacting with each other on the surface level, craving to go deeper, yet so afraid. The outcome, gossip, distractions, drugs, and alcohol. The sisterhood destroyed. The brotherhood destroyed. No one has my back. I'm not supported. I can't trust. Backstabbed. Thrown under the bus. The crowd will turn against me, and I'll be all alone if I speak up, express myself, and see the truth. So I'll stifle my self-expression, not let anyone see the real me. So that's what we're dealing with. Healing that wound that so many of us have experienced as children. So I want to welcome the amazing priestess, Elayne Doughty, who has just done so much amazing work. And I'm actually going to just have her share a little bit of background with you before we begin, because she can tell you her, where she's coming from and the work that she's already been doing in this realm for a while. So welcome, Elayne. I'm really excited that we get to play together today.
Me too, sister. Wow, okay, so let me just take a moment here. What do I want you to know? What I want you to know is there's many things I could share about myself, about what I've done, and la 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 la. But what's really important is why I'm here. I'm here because what I know makes a difference in the world is when we as women show up in our presence, when we show up in the fullness of who we actually are, and we risk taking off the masks and the barriers and the ways in which we hide ourselves and hide our true feelings and hide what we really know to be our deeper knowing inside of ourselves. And how when we do that, no one benefits, basically. I really know that it's when we show up in our presence that we make a difference in the world. It's who we are being that touches other people, that changes situations. And so to me, the biggest wound that's happened, Tanya, and this is in my own life, and it continues to be something I work on, which is around trusting women, trusting our sisters, learning how to navigate the sometimes very difficult, challenging, vulnerable, sensitive relationship issues that come up between us when we start to step into our power. Because part of the reason I believe that we don't step into our power is because we don't want to upset our sisters. We don't want to be in competition with them. We don't want to outshine them. We don't want to be thought of as being better than them. We worry about being liked. We worry that if we get too big, then the other person will feel bad, or we get, whatever version of it is, or we judge other women for what they're doing because we secretly wish we could do it. And the list goes on and on. And what I know about that is in my own work, which is the priestessing work and the lineage of bringing back the priestess energy onto the planet is the very thing that divided us as priestesses, as healers, as midwives, as seers, as women who were available to one another, was patriarchy, the dominant ideology of patriarchy. And we essentially were completely pitted against one another. We were pitted against one another to have to be in competition, to have to be the best, to have to be the prettiest. And we're at a point in our collective history, our collective consciousness, our collective evolution where each one of us has a part to play in healing that wound. That's why I'm here, you know, and my work has become increasingly about that in myself. And I'll be really honest with you, it's about how I am in relationship, not just to my sisters, but to organizations, to everybody. Relationship has been wounded, and the feminine has been wounded. And so as sisters, I'm just delighted that we get to be here and in this conversation, Tanya, because I know that this is where the real difference happens. And I know it's where the real nitty-gritty work happens between us too, because I'm not going to say that this is easy. It's not. It's challenging. And that's why we need one another to be honest and real about it. So hopefully that's what we're here to do today. Get honest, get real with how it is. How do we heal this wound?
Yes. I was, right before we got on this call today, I was watching for the first time this performance piece that I put on I put together this theater performance called Rationalize. I did this back in June, and I have not watched the recording, and so I just watched it right before this. And it's all about how I start it is that I didn't want to be a girl growing up. I wanted to be a little boy. And it was much safer to be a boy, and girls were weak, and I was constantly sick, and I felt like I couldn't trust my best friend because, you know, she might steal a boy if I told her that I liked him. And there was this constant competition going on, and this just feeling of like, you know, boys are better than girls, and boys get to do, you know, they get freedom, and they get to play sports better, you know, and all these things. And it was pretty crazy to watch that video right before we're having this conversation. And I feel like it's a really great place for us to start is, and with the quote from my book, is like this idea and this notion that it's weak to be a girl, and this whole like, you know, do we even have a light? You know, are we even taught as little girls to shine our light? I mean, I wasn't. It was like, no, boys shine their light. You know, girls are stupid. So yeah, I just wanted to share that, and also just see if you personally had an experience when you were growing up of the same thing, or you know, your story.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you talk about wanting to be a boy growing up, and I think I shared a little bit this last time we spoke, but you know, the nutshell of the kernel of my own story that I stand on at this point in my life is that I was raised as a boy. I was raised in an environment where I wasn't around girls, I wasn't around my mom, I was around my dad and my brother, and what resulted there was an alienation from girls, an alienation from being a girl, and definitely I was ridiculed in my own family for having female sensibilities. In other words, for being sensitive, for being empathic, for being, as they would call it, hysterical. You know, I was the hysterical in the family because I had emotions and hormones and, you know, all the good things that we have as women. And the wounding that I really got was, I felt at both these feelings very strongly. On one side, I felt completely alienated from being a girl and what it meant to be a girl and how to be a girl. And at the other side, a secret, deep, deep yearning to understand that and to be part of the club, you know, to belong. And so I felt like I was one of those girls that was on the outside looking in, desperately yearning to be connected. And that's been my story that I've worked at healing my entire life, is choosing to step into sisterhood and come to understand what that means, and realizing that my story your story is our collective story. You know, so many of us are carrying a woundedness around what it means to be a girl. So why would we value sisterhood? Why would we value each other if we can't even value ourselves? You know, that's the root of it. You know, before I came on the call with you today, I was writing something and I was coming back down to that classic statement that I'm either not enough or I'm too much, right? That dyad, and I know all of you know what I'm talking about because it's a collective belief that we've got a legacy with, right? Either I'm not enough or I'm too much. And as girls, that's a setup for us because we can't shine either way. Either we're too much and we've got to shut it down, or we're not enough and we're constantly striving to be more than who we actually are. So that's a setup, right? So take that ideology, that belief system, and put it into sisterhood relationships, and you end up with something disastrous, which is we all want to shine, but we're all scared to, and we're scared to let each other shine, but at the same time we think that that's what we're meant to do. So we get into these pseudo relationships with each other where we're trying to support each other, but it's not real. It's not real support. It's not really being seen. And we all know what that feels like. And then what that does is breed this whole place of disconnect. Then we don't really feel connected to each other. And the wound continues. We continue to be in the wound. So for me, in my own life, Tanya, and I know this is probably true for many of us who are here, there's been a deep, deep desire for authenticity. And at the same time, a deep fear of authenticity and intimacy. You know, and so I think even as I'm sitting here saying this, I'm aware of the emotion in my heart, you know. It's like, what does it take for us to actually come into real contact with each other, to risk it, you know? And even here in our conversation right now, it's like, you know, how do we bridge that place where there's so much distrust that's happened, even if it's not in our consciousness, it's there in the unconscious. And that's part of what we have to recognize is it might not already be in our conscious mind that we're, you know, fearful of connection, but somewhere in there it's happening. So I'm just sitting with that, you know, and thinking about the tremendous courage that it takes for us to move into honest, authentic relationship with each other.
Mm. I really want to just highlight that point that you made because it's so powerful. Of this idea of my Google Hangout is like going crazy on me over here. of the pseudo relationship, and this I really want relationship. I really want sisterhood, and then there's that what you just said so beautifully, so eloquently, is this you know, not really, it's like this we've got to hold ourselves back because you know, this, and I don't even remember how you said it, but it was just so perfect, of this, like, if I outshine you, I want the spotlight, but I want you to have a spotlight. Can we share that spotlight? And so it's like this push and pull that we're in relationship with one another. I've experienced this. And so there's just this holding ourselves back, I think, and not really allowing ourselves to even talk about that piece. Right?
Absolutely. And how do we then enter into something that's more authentic and share, collaborate? I mean, I really do believe, I've been in this conversation so many times in the last week, Tanya, that you wouldn't believe it. So it's obviously a meme, it's a gestalt, it's happening in the collective consciousness, which is about the fact that we're being called into collaboration. And of course, here we are collaborating. And all week I've been collaborating on everybody else's programs, right? And supporting everybody else in their endeavors, because their endeavor is actually my endeavor. Because truly, there's only really one of us here. And if we could get past the fact that we all are in these separate bodies and separate egos and separate personalities, actually, when I support you, I'm supporting myself. And that's the model of sisterhood that I'm really seeing as being the healing, is is to be able to speak to what comes up when I see you in your power. What's the truth of what comes up in me? And where am I called to work on it and work on myself and come to some kind of healing within myself so that I can actually be in collaboration with you. In other words, I can actually support you to be in the spotlight for a moment, to have your medicine be the piece that's being conveyed, because it's your medicine. And we all benefit from that. I benefit from it. But you see, this is the thing, is we've been taught that that's not okay. And we're scared of it. We still don't know how to do it. And of course we don't know how to do it because we haven't been doing it. We've been doing something vastly different, which is called, I'm the winner, I'm the best, I'm the one who's got it all. And no, you can't come over and play in this space with me because it's my space. And I own it. And it's mine. Now, there is some value toward being able to own your power and stand in your space. But it's not about your space. It's about being in relatedness. And that is the feminine. That is the sisterhood. That is how it's always functioned, is we work well in communication and collaboration with each other. We don't work well in isolation. That's what we've been doing for thousands of years. And look where the hell it's got us. It hasn't really got us anywhere. It's got us into this terrible mess that we're in, you know, and yet we don't have good models of how to do it, Tanya. So I'm learning as much as anyone here how to do it. Remembering, learning, innovating. How do we actually support each other to be in our magnificence and to really look at what comes up when someone else is shining their light?
So question for you, because I think this might be coming up for the audience right now, is, okay, so I'm going to support everyone else in what they're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or as you're doing, right? Like you're supporting different people's products and services and launches, and then it's, you know, it's almost like this, well, I will probably burn out if I do that, right? Like, what if I'm constantly putting all my effort into supporting everyone else, then how am I making sure, or how do you make sure that you don't burn out? And that
great question, right?
Yeah.
Right. So let's think about this for a moment. Relatedness means two-way. It means there's a giving and there's a receiving. And if there's not the receiving happening, if there isn't the receiving on the other end and it's just giving, that's the defunct model of sisterhood and femininity that we've been living in, which has us become martyrs and has us become sacrificial lambs to a cause where we're completely burned out and we don't have any ability to be able to take care of ourselves, right? There's a codependent model. That's a wound of sisterhood too. It's not about that. There has to be a give and a receive. Now, I think part of the problem is that we're also trained to not think that we're meant to have any needs or be allowed to receive things or to ask for things that we might need, right? So we don't then ask for what we need in return, or we block what we're being given. Because the truth is that I'm here supporting you, sweetheart, but it's not one way. You're also supporting me. Because truly you're in conversation with me. Now, if there was just a traditional level interview going on in here where, you know, it's just like question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, and there isn't a dialogue happening, then that's a different thing. But we're being related here. We're actually having a conversation with each other that gives space for us both to be here. That's called being in relationship. You know, and I think there is an old model. And it's really interesting as you're saying it, because what it comes up to me is it's like there's an old model here that is beginning to crumble away. And the model is, it's the story, is that if I give to you, I don't get anything back. What happens if giving is also receiving? What happens if you actually allow yourself, as I am in this moment, to receive the joy of being in connection with you, a sister who I've never met in person, but I've come to know in the last however long it is, and whose work I really respect and who I resonate with and who I find to be a good, solid human being. There's a lot that I'm getting from that, right? If I let myself.
So perfect.
Yeah.
You had a sentence you were saying?
No, go ahead. I'm just reflecting on it because it's so alive in me and in all the women that I'm working with and the spaces that I've been in all week, that it just feels like we're on the edge of something here that's so paradigm shifting that we can't, it's like an itch we can't scratch. We're attempting to get at it, but it's so other than how we've been doing stuff up until now that it doesn't even resemble how it's been structured, right? The way forward is something completely different, and we'll be in it, and then we'll recognize we're in it. Once it's shifted, we'll go, oh, it shifted, now we're in this new paradigm. But we're kind of on the cusp of it here, and I think that's what you're really speaking to, is the trust. I mean, when you said the word trust, I was like, yeah, we have to trust that there's a new way to do this. There isn't what we're told the way to do it. Like, particularly in business, I've had some great business conversations with women this week where they're like, well, you know, I'm not meant to speak about your thing and my thing because people are meant to only have one call to action. And they're like, but I don't want to do that. I want people to know that they have options. They can go wherever they choose. And I'm like, well, isn't that the feminine at work, right? You get to choose where you want to go and where you're attracted to. You don't have to close the space down because you're frightened that if you don't, that somehow you're going to lose the limelight. I don't know. It's something that just feels like it's really up for me in all of the conversations. So, yeah, I'm not sure where that's taking us, but it feels really coherent to me to be asking the question of how do we share power? How do we share the light? How do we share the space? How do we really tame the beasts of competition and comparison and judgment? There we are. That's really it.
Well, before we go there, because I think you have a little exercise that we could do that could be really powerful.
Yeah.
And I want to speak into one way that I've been able to practice receiving. And it's through leading. And so it's like if I'm leading something and I'm not actually thinking about what can I be receiving while I'm leading, I burn out. So whether it was an event or I led a circle or, you know, I led a retreat, I would be so burned out and exhausted afterwards if I was just about giving to the group. When I changed that and I actually came in with, okay, what if I was doing this retreat for myself? Or what if I was doing this event for myself? What do I want to get tonight or this weekend? And what am I going to receive? It shifted everything for me. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And even, you know, it was, you know, we just created a level 2 for Sistership Circle. And everyone was like, we want level 2 and we want to do something, you know, that's just like, how do we go deeper? How do we go take this to the next level? And I had to ask myself, okay, well, what would be worth it for me to continue to lead this group? Because if I'm not enrolled and I'm not like receiving value myself, I'm not going to be engaged as the leader of the group. And the more that I know that this is going to serve me, then it's actually going to be stronger for the group because my heart is like 100% in. And that's exactly what happened, is I tuned into what do I want for my own level 2. And I'm leading it, but like what would have me like really want to be there every single week for myself? And boom, that shifted everything, and it just took off from that point because I was like, my heart was so in it, and everyone can feel the passion, and everyone's like, oh my God, the energy is so huge in this group, you know? And it's like, yeah, because I came forward and I really came with that intention of receiving.
Brilliant. So there you are.
Yeah.
So you're flying in the face of what we are trained to think of it as, right? Which is that when we're giving, we're being depleted, and there's a paradigm shift that we're being asked to be in, which is what does giving look like if it's also paradoxically receiving, like that sacred pair of giving and receiving. The giving doesn't really exist without the receiving on the other end, both ways. And so relatedness requires that. Patriarchy isn't based on that model. Patriarchy is based on you give out, you effect, you make things happen, you are separate, you are individual, you are part of, you know, part of a collective picture, but you really are individual within that, taking your own actions. When we move into a sisterhood model, from my perspective, and really get present to that, we're being asked to come into this idea that we're all affected and affecting, and we're related, and that process means that we're mending a wound of disconnection. And we're being asked and having to face into the shadow of what's kept us disconnected. And that's where I think that the biggest work for us, most of us, is. And so what I'd love to do is I just love to presence it with us all. There's a big part of my work in the world, is a big part of my own personal journey, continues to be. I continue to unearth how this operates in my own life. But it's the issue around where we are in competition and comparison and judgment with our sisters. And what I want to start off by saying, Tanya, is that let's just accept that we all are. Let's just give ourselves an out here. Let's just love ourselves enough to say, right, that even if you're not conscious of it, that it's there, that it's operating, it's in your shadow. And the most important thing about this is the healing of the judgment of self, of ourselves, for being that way. Because the first step to any healing has to be with self. We have to look at, okay, I'm judging her, but now I'm judging me for judging her because I think I should be a better woman or a better sister or whatever it is, right? In order to show up with her. And the truth is the first step to any healing in my own experience has been coming to peace with yourself, that you're a human being and that you have light and shadow. And the journey here is really to love your light as you love your shadow. To be able to love yourself unconditionally, exactly where you are. That's the journey. So what I want to invite us all to do for a moment, if you're willing, is I want you to think about a woman that you admire for a moment. I want us all to think about someone that we really admire, and that when we look at her, whatever it is, whether it's her work in the world, whether it's her relationship, whether it's her home, whether it's the way she moves in the world, whether it's the way she dresses, whether it's the way she sings, dances, whatever it is, but we just admire her. It's maybe someone you've even got a secret little crush on, you know, like you just think she's the bee's knees. And I want you to think about this woman. And I want you to notice for a moment, Tanya, if I go on blank, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Okay, good. I lost myself for a moment there. I wasn't sure if you could hear me. So I want you to imagine the woman for a moment in front of you. And if you want to close your eyes, that makes it easier for you to do that. You can go ahead and close your eyes. I just want you to see her in front of you, this gorgeous woman, this wonderful creature. And I want you just to look at her for a moment and feel the love you have for her and the admiration you have for her. And she's a sister to you, or maybe she's not even someone that you know, but she's someone that you feel akin to. Okay, so I want you to feel that for now, and you feel her in your heart. Now I'm going to ask you, how do you compare yourself to her? What is the dialogue you're having with yourself when you see her? And I want you to be really honest with yourself. I'm not as ... She is more ... Whatever it is. She's more successful. She's more talented. I'm not as beautiful. I'm not as slim. I'm not as powerful. Whatever it is. Just notice the comparisons. It may be I am more of this, I'm less of that. You know how comparison works like that. You're either more of something or less of something. I just want you to feel into the comparison, and then notice in your heart what happens as you start to hear the ways that you compare yourself. What happens inside you? Notice what happens to your heart. Notice what happens to your body. Okay. And I'm going to speak to what happens to me in this space, which I think is what happens to a lot of women, is as I'm comparing, I start to feel separated from this person. I start to feel a distance between us. I start to feel like she's over there and I'm over here, and I start to look at her through different eyes. I can feel my heart start to shut down a little bit. I can feel myself start to get a little bit even judgmental of myself and of her. So this is the next piece of this exercise. So you've noticed how you're comparing. So what then do you judge in yourself? How are you judging yourself in comparison to this woman? What happens? And then how are you judging her? And can we feel the slippery slope starts to happen now? So we're comparing and now we're judging. And the judgments are something like, well, you know, she's got an easier life than me, or she's had whatever, more help, or she got whatever it is, whatever version of your story, you know, that she had somehow she got something that you didn't, that makes her better than you, that means that you have to feel this way, right? And so I'm going to ask you to notice as you go into this space what happens to you. And I know from working with thousands of women through this process, what happens is we start to see the other person as separate. We start to separate, and then we start to shut down our hearts. And then we start to hide ourselves. And we start to hide our judgments, and we start to try to appear a certain way rather than feeling what we actually feel. And so what do we do in that space? So now this is what I want you to do. I want you to see this woman in front of you again. I want you to feel into your heart. And I want you to feel into the part of your heart that wants to be in communication, collaboration, relationship with this woman, that admires her. Let's go back to the original feeling. And what is it that you really admire in her? Can you feel into what that is? Perhaps it's how amazing she is as a friend. Perhaps it's that she's a great cook. I don't know, it could be anything. Whatever you're admiring her, just let yourself feel it in your heart. And now I'm going to ask you to feel something you admire in yourself. Yes, I did say that. Something you admire in yourself. You have no idea how many women find this incredibly hard to do. Something you respect in yourself. Something you have that you're proud of about who you are, that maybe secretly some other woman is actually admiring in you and comparing themselves to. You know, I had a client of mine just recently say to me, you know, she was struggling in some relationship stuff, and she said to me, she said, but everyone loves you, Elayne. Everyone loves you. Wherever I go, people love you, and people just seem to love you. And that's not my experience. And I sat with what she said, and I could feel how it created separation between us and how it made her feel bad about herself. And I sat with that, and I was like, well, yeah, that's true, and you're not seeing the whole story. You're not seeing the wound of my need to be loved and how I lead with that. You're not seeing my vulnerability around wanting to be included, my story of not belonging, and that love is a way that I get included. And so is there a shadow to my love? Absolutely. And do I have to work with that? Yes, absolutely. But to her, it just looked like this easy thing that I have. But she wasn't privy to the shadow of my love, you know? And so I want to just give us permission to realize that whatever we admire in the other person also has a shadow to it. Whatever we admire in ourselves also has a shadow to it. That means it's not just a path of ease and grace. There is some muck and mire in there. So let's come back to what happens when we can admire ourselves and admire the other person and name how we're in comparison. When we actually can name it to ourselves from a place of not judging, my experience is that it begins to dissolve. We take the power out of it. Okay? And it's scary to do it because we have all kinds of judgments about who we're meant to be, and we're meant to love each other, and we're meant to care about each other. We're not meant to judge each other. But the truth is that we're all at it all the time. That's what human beings do. And sisters have been pitted against each other for thousands of years. This is how we've functioned. This is how we've been told we've had to function. You need to be the prettiest to get the man in the room. You've got to make sure you hold on to him, because if you don't have the man, then you're not going to survive. Because the only way you can have power is if you're married. And the only way you can have property is if you're married. The only way you can survive is if you're married and you give him a child. That, up until the 1960s, darlings, was the reality. So we are 30 years, 40 years into a new paradigm. It's like that tiny blip. No wonder we're all wandering around, wondering how to be in this new version of being sisters and women in the world. We've never been in this position before. We've never had this kind of power. We've never had this kind of right to our voice. And we've never had the courage to step forward and actually say, this is who I am, and this is what's important. So I'm just holding you to this as a practice. It's not a one-time practice, it's a daily practice. Start catching yourself when you're in comparison, and love yourself, and look at what is it that you're doing, and see how can you bring it back to balance. How can you see the whole picture? How can you love that part of the woman who probably struggles on the other side of whatever it is that you admire? That's the truth. We're all human.
Wow. I think the piece that I'm most resonating with is if we can start to really see that shadow of love, and if we can start asking that question of, oh, you know, instead of saying, oh, she's more successful than me, like, what's the shadow behind that that's gotten her to that place, right? Or like you said, that you know, you are so loved by everyone, and the journey and the shadow that had you step into that.
Right.
It shifts everything when we can start seeing people, the different aspects of people, because it's, you know, it's like that's the complete story, and
right.
that's where we find the compassion.
Oh, it gives me chills. It gives me chills. Right, right, and it's so confronting, because then what we have to do is be vulnerable, right? I had to get vulnerable with you and say, it's not all light and love over here, right? That there's a wound that I've been working with all these years too. That when I'm in my wounded state doesn't serve me. But when I actually am in my integrated state, yes, I can come from love and be that lovable, but let's not be ridiculous here, right? Everybody's journey to where they are is based upon where it is that we have been wounded or somehow disconnected or hurt that has caused us to build a structure around it. And what the journey is the pseudo relationship, and the healing of that between us as sisters is to be able to sit together and look each other in the eyes. And it's so scary. I mean, my whole body has a reaction to it because it's something that we haven't been able to do. So every time we do it, we change something for the collective. When we come into real contact and look each other in the eyes and say, this is what's true for me. And I know how confronting it is, sweethearts. I get it. But that's my ask. That's our ask here is are you willing to just be real with one another? For love, out of love for your actual connection, for your relationship, because the relationship will thrive when you come at it from a position of owning your own separation, your own comparisons, your own judgments, and realizing that they're about you, they're not about the other person, they're actually about you.
Yeah. I'd like to add one piece, and that is this notion of truth. Right, because I think a lot of times we then get attached to, well, this is my truth, right? And so if we could actually look at it as I'm calling out my shadow and my illusion, and the truth is actually underneath that. So what we're asking you to do is for me to say to Elayne, for example, you know, Elayne, I'm feeling really disconnected from you because, you know, you're just, everyone loves you, and I feel like I don't belong when I'm around you. Is that the truth? No, it's my experience, it's my story, it's my shadow. Mm-hmm. So we have to be able to say that, right? Like there's so much power in me actually able to say that to Elayne. But then it's like, okay, so what's underneath that? What's the next layer? And that's where like the truth is, you know, is the hurt. Mm-hmm. It's the wound underneath, and then the truth of what's underneath that is like, you know, the love of, and the worth of who I really am.
That's right. That's right. What a beautiful synopsis of that process. So that would be to add that in, is that when you sit with someone is to be willing to name the projection, name the shadow, name the piece that you're not owning, and then to feel into what's actually real underneath that. What's really truth in your heart? You know, because I really believe in our deep hearts, Tanya, that what we're all craving and yearning for is the authentic connection. We just don't know how to get there. And it's so scary to navigate those waters because we're all so sensitive. That's part of being a woman too. We're sensitive. We want to be loved. We are incredibly empathic and psychic and tuned in, and our main desire is to nurture and have everybody you know, the feminine wants everybody to succeed and be well. And I mean, there's this beautiful way in which we can move as sisters, but it's scary because to step over the threshold of that, we have to navigate the perception of, I'm going to hurt you if I share with you where I feel disconnected. And I think one of the greatest things that we can do is cultivate that place of, and I know you do this in your sistership circles beautifully, and that's part, you know, your deepest calling, and part of why I'm here with you is because of the work that you're doing in the world around this, but creating places where women feel safe enough to actually come into their truth with each other. I mean, what a gift. My whole body vibrates at the thought of it because it's so powerful to be held in a space where that's the value.
Yeah. And I know we got to wrap up in a few minutes here, but I have found that the danger in this, and what you want to try, if you're watching this, try to stay away from, is I've had so many women who've been like, well, I'm going to speak my truth to you. Okay, great. But they project and they blame, and it's like as if it's my fault, or as if I'm personally doing something wrong to them. And so you really want to be sure that when you do share, you know, what's authentically there for you, that you own it and you really see truly of like, where is this my stuff? Mm-hmm. And that's when it's going to land. That's when it's actually going to create more connection, what you really want, than more disconnection. Totally. If you go into blaming or you go into projection, if I you know, really go at Elayne like she did something wrong to me, that's just going to create more disconnect and more separation between us. When I can own my side of the street and where this is coming from within me, that's where her and I are going to become, you know, we're going to get past that pseudo relationship and we're going to be able to go a layer deeper. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. What a great pickup. And what I'd say in closing around that, Tanya, is this is a skill set, and it's something that we have to learn how to do. It doesn't happen overnight. And my real sort of kernel around this is that speaking your truth can only happen when your heart is open. So that means that you need to be able to own 100% that whatever it is the other person in your perception is or isn't doing is an aspect of you. In other words, I am that. And I can own the part of me that is that. And therefore, I am going to deal with the part of me that's judging this person. Because if you come to a person from judgment, you're going to get nowhere. That's the truth. You can't come into intimacy with judgment because it destroys judgment. It destroys the intimacy. So what we're really looking to do is to own the place inside ourselves. Own the judgment, as you so beautifully said, and then come to whoever it is, our sister, and be able to sit and say, this is from my lens. This is where I'm sitting. This is what I know inside of myself. I know the part of me that does this, and in our relationship, when this happens, this is how I feel. This is what happens to me, and I'm owning that. I'm not making you take responsibility that you somehow need to be different because I'm hurt or upset. Right? We're starting from a different place, and it's hard. That is hard to do when you're nervous and upset with each other. So it's a real practice to come to owning that projection, owning that judgment, and coming with an open heart. You know, and the desire to create more connection, not separation. That's really it. Oh, I could take some of my own medicine right now.
I know, me too. That's what's so great about these calls. See, now we're receiving, right?
Oh my God, I am so receiving. You have no idea. I have a conversation that I'm having with someone very, very dear to me, where this is exactly what I'm being called to walk my talk in. Here it is. Here it is. And it's, you know, how confronting is that? I'm sitting here speaking on it, apparently teaching on it, and it's what I need to go do in my own life. Sisters, there's no separation. Whatever it is we're here to teach, we're learning and teaching each other. That's the bottom line. That's what it means to be sisters.
There it is. Oh, what a perfect note to end on. That it's not that we're better. It's not that we're separate. Elayne and I are just like you. So perfect. And we're going to take our own medicine. That's really the key of like what makes us feminine leaders is that we will talk and then we'll walk it. So Elayne will go have that conversation. And that's
have to. Otherwise, what the hell am I doing? How can I sit here? Right, I can't sit here and do this conversation and then not do that conversation. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah, congruency.
Exactly.
Congruency.
Exactly. That's how we'll feel sisterhood, is through that congruency. Because then we can trust each other. That's where trust is built. I can trust you because I know that you're going to say what you're going to say and then you're going to walk your talk around it. That's powerful, isn't it? Beautiful. Yeah, good.
That's a good quote. We're going to quote you on that one. There's our tweetable. Congruency is where trust is built.
Woo! There you go. We just can't.
I like that one. Okay, so Elayne, where do they find you? If they're wanting to come visit you and play with you, where do they go?
Come visit me. You can just come to my website, elaynedoughty.com. Very easy to find. You can Google me out there, Facebook me out there. Type in Priestess Presence practically anywhere. It'll lead you to me somehow or another. It's all kinds of ways from small offerings to big offerings of ways to come play in the temple with me if that's something that you're drawn to doing. And I'd be delighted to have any of your sisters come be sisters in my community and for us to weave our communities, because that's also part of what we're doing as leaders. So beautiful.
Exactly. And Elayne is the one, if you want to do some deep archetype work around the feminine, Elayne is your lady. So, and amongst other things. But yeah, this real embodiment of the High Priestess, which I absolutely love and adore her for. Thank you, Elayne. I'm just so excited that we got to have this really, really deep, powerful conversation. And
oh my God.
We get to receive as much as give. So thank you for being my partner as usual. And everyone, next week we have another Sistership Circle inspiration, so you can go to sistershipcircle.com/inspiration. And you could actually look at all the other videos that I've been interviewing incredible leaders on all these different topics. So we'll see you next week, and have a great day.
Oh, yay. Beautiful.